Let's do this. I mean, this is from way downtown. This is like from San Francisco to San Jose and off the crossbar from Leon Bailey. I mean, signs of life from this Jamaican team. It's what you want to see.
Warner Brown's pass for Leon Bailey, and there's the finish for Jamaica. And it had to be him, already having struck the woodwork twice.
All right, Bailey, we've talked about him needing to step up. Takes it so quick. Wonderful. Goalkeeper doesn't even move.
Hello, sunshine. Welcome to the State of the Union, presented by Yerba Madre, the boost you need when you want to win. Drink Yerba Madre. Come to life. I'm Alexi Lalas, and this is where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue colored glasses. This show is live, as it will be throughout the Gold Cup, following each and every day of action. This show, we review day 7 and our second look at Panama, and we preview day 8 as Canada returns to action. But first, joining me as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding lights, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how you doing on this? What are we looking at? Friday, June 20th in the year 2025.
I'm doing well. In each of the last two nights, we had Guess, Maurice Seydoux on Wednesday, Landon Donovan on Thursday, which meant I had to slide over a bit. So now I'm readjusting to being in the position I have to be in when it's just two at the desk.
Speaking of readjusting, over the last couple of weeks, you've told us about your problem sleeping. Is it getting any better? Have you found any type of solution to your problem?
After several bad nights in a row, last night I slept very well, so I felt great today.
With any aid, medicinal aid, or just straight vodka? What are we looking at?
ZZ Quill.
Oh, same thing, right? All right, well, listen, let's don't bore us. Get to the chorus. We got some action to get to today. It wasn't one that they're going to put in a time capsule, but there were some goals and there was some action. Where shall we start, my friend?
We had a Group C doubleheader. We'll take them in order. First up in San Jose, Jamaica claimed a 2-1 come-from-behind win over Guadeloupe. All the goals in the first half. Thierry Ambrose gave Guadeloupe the lead. And then late in the first half, Leon Bailey and Jonathan Russell scored for Jamaica. Late in the second half, Andre Blake made a couple of miraculous saves to preserve the victory.
Yeah, we're going to get to Mr. Bailey here in a second because he really came to life, as did this Jamaica team. Not the greatest performance, but certainly better than what we saw. It was, a hot affair, literally hot affair there in San Jose. But it's kind of nice to finally see Jamaica do what you expect them to do. Because, we've over the last couple of games here now, when we're talking about Jamaica, we've talked about the brand of Jamaica and the Reggae Boyz. And, this is now on multiple decades where they have been kind of living off that. And, we were looking up some information about Andre Blake, and, he came to light in 2014. So it's over a decade now that he has been in goal. And for me, the most consistent, and maybe even you could argue, one of the most talented and important and influential players for Jamaica over the last decade. And that's a problem for this Jamaica team that, over the last couple of decades, we kind of have always had hopes for. And this doesn't change it today, but at least they're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, it's Andre Blake's 6th Gold Cup. Mikel Antonio once again came on as a sub. I think that's probably going to be his role for the duration of this tournament. After being out for so long, I don't know if he's going to start any games here. This was obviously an important win for Jamaica, but they still have a lot of work to do to get out of this group because they play Panama in their last group game. Guatemala faces Guadeloupe, so I would say advantage Guatemala still.
Yeah, I mean, Jamaica is going to have to continue to evolve and and impress and still play better. I mean, they even gave opportunities to Guadeloupe today, so it is, I guess, problematic for this Jamaican team. Steve McLaren at one point, the coach for Jamaica, was up in the stands. Now, let's be honest, there was not a lot of people in the stands, so he wasn't kicking anybody out of their seat, but he obviously wanted a better vantage point. Ironically, when he came down from that vantage point is when Jamaica actually started to turn it on and to ultimately get their goals. But whatever hair he has left, I think this team is making him pull it out strand by strand by strand for some of the things that they have done, but he has to be happy ultimately in the final result here today. All right, listen, it is time now for the boost of the game presented by Yerba Madre. Yerba Madre, the boost you need when you want to win. Drink Yerba Madre, come to life. We mentioned Leon Bailey kind of coming to life and imposing himself on this game. And there was a moment where he got the ball well in his own half of the field, looked up, acknowledged that the goalkeeper was out, and he hit an absolute bomb that hit off the crossbar and was really unlucky not to go in. So, in a day of really good play from him, an important play, I mean, he is someone that you want to step up, and unfortunately, too often he hasn't stepped up. He had a really, really good game today. And like we said, this shot, if you're watching the show, you can see it. I mean, he is downtown, my friends. Like I said on air, that was like San Francisco all the way to San Jose here. And if not for, a couple of inches, that's in the goal there. So wonderful little moment from him.
The reference I always make is Pele against Czechoslovakia in 1970, but you could also go David Beckham against Wimbledon or even Carly Lloyd against Japan in 2015.
Well, if you want it done right, you go with Carly Lloyd. She didn't hit it off the crossbar. She said, "No, I'm just going to put this thing in." So it was cool. It was a fun moment. We were all watching in the green room, and it's in the air for so long that you have time to acknowledge this is happening and then to react in real time as it's flying through the air. So, anyway, go ahead.
We should mention Guadeloupe had a late equalizer chalked off. I'm still not quite sure if it was the correct call.
So I think that there was a pushing call there because we went through the whole list of it. Whatever offside there was, it was not somebody that was involved in the play. And we were scratching our heads saying, well, what could it possibly be? And on some of the replays, you see a push, but it is a weak type of push. And I think they're probably sitting at home feeling aggrieved, and I think they may have a case. But again, you can't be a little pregnant. It's a little push from behind, especially when you get up in the air and you push. It exaggerates the push, and because it was strange, because I don't think that the push ultimately changed the play in that I'm not sure the defender even was going to get it. And we just talked about how important Andre Blake is. He was flailing and actually hit his own man in trying to get to the ball. So they actually got out of jail, pretty nicely there when it comes to Jamaica.
So that was the first game of the day in San Jose. We then moved to Austin for the other Group C match. Panama claimed a 1-0 win over Guatemala. Thomas Rodriguez with the only goal in the first half. His second of the tournament. He got one off the bench against Guadeloupe. He got a start tonight and delivered again.
Yeah, a couple of things on this game. We've talked so much about Panama and, this, turning into kind of a nemesis for the U.S. But within that, we have seen Panama improve and dramatically. And you can tell that this is a team that has not just confidence, but maturity. And while they scored more goals in the first game, I actually thought this was maybe a more impressive performance because, like I said, they were more mature, they were patient, and we heard Warren Barton call on the game, and he was absolutely right in this. The way that they dealt with not a whole lot of pressure from Guatemala, but they got the goal that they needed. They recognized that they're not going to stand on romance or anything like that, and they just saw it out. And that's what mature teams do. It's not sexy, it's not beautiful, but it is incredibly effective. And mature teams recognize that there are going to come points where you need to do that, especially when they recognized that that Guatemala wasn't going to have the capacity to counter on a consistent basis. Had a couple of chances, but for the most part, they shut them down. And it was certainly well deserved from Panama.
Busy day for Warren Barton. He called two
Yeah.
matches, one with Tyler Terrens, the other with Mark Falwell. Warren got a little cranky at times today, but overall, I thought he did a nice job.
Yeah, well, cranky and Warren, that's synonymous. The Rodriguez goal, I only pointed out because we had come on air, and myself and Mauricio Du, we were talking about Ajeman up top for the U.S. And we'll talk a little bit more about the U.S. here, but this goal is the epitome of a striker who smells the opportunity. And I don't think that Patrick Ajeman yet has developed that scent, that ability to sniff it out and to be there. Because if you watch what Rodriguez did, is the ball came through into the box. Now, any forward, any striker, that is your job to be there. To be quite honest, that might be your most important job, is to be there when the service comes in. But if you watch, he actually goes around the back of his defender on that blind side. And by the time the defender realizes it, and every defender has been in this position because you get caught ball watching and you have to turn, and by the time you figure it out. But again, you could see in that moment the nostrils flailing almost as he smelled opportunity, he smelled blood. Bora Milutinovic, our old coach from many, many years ago with the national team, instead of being able to talk, although he spoke 5 languages, he didn't speak any of them well. He would turn to you at one point when he got frustrated with you and just literally go, you need to smell. You need to smell the moments. And he's absolutely right. In that moment, Rodriguez smelled it. And Ajiman, if he is going to continue to improve, he's going to have to develop that sense. So it was fun to see.
So 4 teams at this Gold Cup have 2 wins out of 2. Mexico, Costa Rica, the U.S., and Panama. Of those 4, Panama is the only one that hasn't clinched a quarterfinal berth yet, but they're in great shape in Group C. I expect them to advance. Speaking of the U.S., they moved on last night, courtesy of a 1-0 win over Saudi Arabia in Austin. Chris Richards with the goal. We talked plenty about this game with Landon last night. You've now had one more day to reflect. Any more thoughts on it?
So, I think I was driving into work today with Rob Stone. We carpool in, and we talk about a lot of different things. And, I had come on air talking at the beginning of this tournament, talking about the American fan base out there that has kind of had their arms folded, saying, all right, the angst and the anger and, like I said, the apathy. So those arms were folded saying, you're going to have to win me back. You're going to have to do something that piques my interest. And over the last couple of games, I think that they have. So Rob was joking that there's still some people with their arms folded, but maybe they've unfolded them a little bit and now they're just in the pockets here. Obviously, the goal by the end of the tournament is to have out of their pockets clapping and cheering and screaming and doing all that kind of stuff. That's in the distance. They still got a long way to go. But I think they are starting to turn some heads. I think they are starting to gain interest from people that maybe had tuned them out, but you can just as easily regress. And I look forward to the next game because I think it's going to provide, from a physical perspective, something much different than they have seen. But I also worry if and when this team gets punched in the nose, what the reaction is. Only because I don't know. Not because I don't think that they can do it, but I haven't seen them do it yet. And so I almost want them to face at some point some adversity and to see how they react. And I'm sure Mauricio Pochettino, in his assessment, because ultimately this is what it is, wouldn't mind having a moment of futility and problems and challenge and see how they react.
Is Rob Stone downstairs right now waiting for you?
Yeah. Rob, he actually he gets a lot of work done because it's quiet. He can be in the dressing room with nobody there. And, Rob Stone is a consummate professional. So he's already preparing for tomorrow and the day after. And so this is a moment. He's got a lot of kids, he's got a lot going on in the house. And so it actually works out all right.
You mentioned Ajiman. The U.S. suddenly banged up top because Downs and Haji Wright are both battling ailments. Doesn't sound like anything too serious. Nevertheless, it could be just Ajiman and Brian White as far as available forwards for the next game.
Yeah, it's concerning. And I don't want anybody to get hurt, but it's also concerning from a practical perspective in that, you want to see other players and you want to be able, if you're a coach, to be able to bring other players on the field that can change the game. And Brian Wright has not yet shown that he can do it at the international level with this U.S. team. Good player and certainly doing great things, but he's been given some opportunities and just hasn't looked the part yet. And who knows, maybe we've talked about Wally pipping, but ultimately it's about taking your opportunities where they come, and they can come through change of coaches, they can come from illness, they can come from injury, whatever it ends up being. And so if he does get called again, Mr. White better get on the field and do some damage.
We talked a lot about the center backs last night, and Jenny Taft had a great report today. She mentioned that in the 2022 World Cup, Tim Ream was already nicknamed Grandpa by his teammates, And yet here he is 3 years later, still going strong, still a starter on this team, delivering performances like he did last night when all 90 minutes played very well against Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I mean, the whole Tim Ream conversation, you know, it depends how you look at it, right? Because it can be framed as this is amazing. We are going to potentially have he's 37 right now, he'll be 38 next summer, a 38-year-old starting for the US men's national team in the World Cup. And you know, it basically shows how good he is. But on the other hand, if you look at it glass half empty, how the hell are we a year away from the World Cup? And center back is a position that we are that that w- that that we are having to play a 37-year-old. Because if you had asked Tim Ream a couple of years ago, there's no way he would have thought that he would be starting in the 2026 World Cup. And yet this is it. So I don't I, I think it's disrespectful to say we're scraping the bottom of the barrel, but I think Mauricio Pochettino is looking around and saying, this is as good as it gets. And it just happens to be a 37 going on 38-year-old by the time of the World Cup. And we look back in history. Well, you look back in history when I was talking about it earlier today. It's hard to find anything in the modern day, and let's say this century, of a U.S. men's national team that's gone to a World Cup and the center backs haven't been anything but in their 20s. So this is uncharted territory if it holds, but it also says that we have failed to develop center backs. And that has kind of been a tradition of quality over the years, but they're just not there.
And there still is this question regarding this upcoming match against Haiti on Sunday on how much Pochettino will rotate. Tyler Adams gave an interview in which he suggested that probably the move is to rotate and get a look at some different players. We'll see. You've got Luna and Berhalter on yellow, so I think those two will sit for sure. Are there players that haven't started these first two games that you're itching to get a look at?
No, not that I'm itching, but I yeah. So you don't start them and because of the yellow card problem.
Right.
You don't want to risk that. I understand that. Tyler Adams, I don't know what his injury status is. I mean, we saw him run around, so I guess the turf toe is okay. But if Berhalter's not playing in that midfield because of the yellow card, then it's kind of maybe a logical type of thing to have him come in and get the job done here and see a different type of mix and a different type of look.
I know he struggled in those two friendlies against Turkey and Switzerland, but I would like to see Brian White get a chance up
Yep.
front. And at the back, I wish there was some young, promising center back that you could play in a game like this. But if you sit Ream, you're playing Miles Robinson, Mark McKenzie. I know what they are too.
Right.
So
Yeah, it's the usual suspects, and nobody new has come along other than Chris Richards, and we've talked ad nauseum about what Chris Richards is, and he deserves all the praise. But Landon was talking last night about this generation of center backs that are just kind of your Jaden Neals and these types of players that they show some promise, but they don't kick on, and it's also disappointing because if you're a center back and you look at the national team, okay, you see what Chris Richards has done, and you say that's fine. But if you're looking for an opportunity, how do you not look at Tim Ream and say, I'm going to take your job? Because guess what? Every generation has had somebody that has done that. And if you're not doing that, then I would argue that I don't want you on my team. I want you targeting and competing and taking it away from somebody. And when you see somebody that is, like I said, 37 years old, as good as he is, I would be licking my chops saying, hey, this is my opportunity. And whether it's Pochettino or in the past, Greg Berhalter, I think they were dying for someone to come along and say, yeah, I don't have to rely on this old guy. It's not, well, he called himself a grandpa, so this old guy. But that's the way it is. And look, if we have to go into the next summer with Tim Ream starting, I think he'll be fine. Yes, he has his weaknesses like anybody. It's just this is as good as it gets, and I think that's applies to a lot of this team. This is as good as it gets, and is that good enough to do something we haven't seen before?
Tomorrow we have a Group B doubleheader, both games in Houston, both live on FS1. First up, Curacao, Canada, then Honduras, El Salvador. Canada with a win would clinch a quarterfinal berth. We know Jesse Marsch suspended for the first two games of this Gold Cup because of that red card in the Nations League. We're still awaiting what the punishment's going to be for that Michigas during the Honduras match, which Canada won 6-0. But Marsch continuing to make headlines. He had an interesting exchange with an English journalist today regarding Canada's style of play. Let's take a listen.
The intensity of the press that you play is as impressive in the last game. Can you keep that up for 3 games? And what's the plan B? Because obviously Curacao will be a lot more physical, probably. They've certainly got the athleticism to go. So what is there a plan B? What happens when you drop a goal behind because they exploit the gaps behind you?
So you sound English?
Yeah, I am English.
That's plan B is a typical question from English people. As managers, we have plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, all the way up to plan double Z. Okay, so by trying to simplify us as one thing, I think it's a little bit insulting to me and to the team, truly. I think that people have questioned whether they could press in the heat, whether we could play against the best teams in the world, whether we could be a good possession team, whether we could be good on set pieces, whether the resilience of the team is strong enough, how do we deal with difficulty. Like, the more that people ask these kinds of questions, the more that I get motivated, and I think the team does too.
All right, listen. I have talked this entire tournament about how much I enjoy the character that Jesse is inhabiting right now. We all know that Jesse can be an asshole, okay? And look, it takes one to know one, okay? He can be ornery, and as I said before, he's taken this provocative stance to kind of take some of the attention off of everybody else and bring it on himself. I don't know who this media member was that was on the receiving end of this, but this gentleman kind of has to recognize that he's taking it for the team and a lot of pent-up frustration over the years. In that, Jesse Marsch in that moment, I know he's the coach of Canada, but he kind of represented all American soccer coaches and players and fans who over our lifetimes and over the years have had to sit there and listen to, condescending, elitist, snobby, snarky, insincere type of either it's questions or just interactions from the English who we know have been so important and so much a part of soccer over the years. And it was just amazing to see, and almost the tables had been turned in that moment. Because on the surface, it's not such a horrible question. But Jesse, in that moment, because he's a smart man, recognized that I can turn it to my advantage. And I thought he played it well. He will be looked at as a villain from some and as a champion from others. But again, those that are out there and have been around a while, they understand exactly what he was saying in that moment.
And remember, he had a very negative experience with Leeds United in which he didn't think he as an American was treated fairly by the English media. So I think a lot of that response was because of that.
Yeah, and I talk all the time about the insecurity that we all have had over the years and the inferiority complex of American soccer, and there's certainly some of that. But you know what? I enjoyed seeing somebody punch back a little bit in that moment. Now, ultimately, as we said yesterday, and we will continue to say, it's all fine and well, but now you got to back it up on the field. And I think he recognizes that, although who knows when he's actually going to be on the sideline anymore, because like you said, he could come in for another suspension and be on double, triple secret probation going forward. Who knows?
Now, on the topic of European snobs getting their comeuppance, another interesting day at the Club World Cup. We did have an MLS team eliminated. LAFC lost 1-0 to Esperance de Tunis. Denny Bouanga missed a penalty deep in stoppage time. So 2 losses in 2 games for LAFC. They gave a good account of themselves in the first game against Chelsea, but today was disappointing.
It was disappointing, and so now you're left with Inter Miami, and kudos to Inter Miami for kind of flying the flag. I know we've talked a lot over the last week about how much stock to put in it, and can you use it, as a referendum, and you know what Inter Miami has done should be praised. And, this is a team that because they are from MLS, where there is a unique structure and, let's be honest, challenges and restrictions in order to manufacture parity as, a um, a part of the very system that has enabled this league to survive. They go into an international tournament kind of with one foot behind their back. And you don't use it as an excuse. It's just the reality of the situation. I do think that in this inevitable compare and contrast that is happening here, and people are doing it. And you're talking about, your Brazilian friends are doing it. You're almost even coming around to it a little bit right now. I still hold out hope for, my dream. I think I've said this before. My dream is to one day wake up and to be told that there is a press conference, and that press conference features 31 chairs on the stage, one for each owner in Major League Soccer of the 30 teams, and then Commissioner Garber. And Commissioner Garber gets up there and announces, we are going to attempt a moonshot. We are going to make MLS the best league in the world. And in order to do that, we are taking away all of the restrictions. Spend as much money as you want. We are also going to say you have to spend at least this much money. And in doing so, we are going to try to make MLS the best league in the world. And I would love to know what that would look like to do something big, bold, brash, American, arrogant, to be the best. And to kind of take that foot that has been tied behind the back for so long, especially when it comes to the international competitions, away.
Does it bother you when people say Inter Miami is an outlier because of Messi? They're not really a team that's representing MLS.
It doesn't bother me. I understand what they're saying, but wouldn't that apply to any team? I think if Messi, arguably the greatest player ever to play the game, was on it. I mean, I saw one of the English, I can't remember which station it was. They they were talking today about Arsenal would win the league if Messi was with Arsenal. That's where they put him and the esteem that they put him. Yeah, I don't think that Inter Miami is an outlier. I think there's plenty of good teams in Major League Soccer, but I also think that Inter Miami has to play by the set of rules relative to Major League Soccer. And while that is conducive to Major League Soccer existing and not just surviving but thriving, and that's why they're 30 years in, and they've created the most successful league in North American professional soccer league in North American history. Again, it poses a challenge when you then put yourself up against others, and it's not a fair playing field. So I would love to see, because it's not for lack of money. You look at the MLS ownership, plenty of deep pockets out there. I also don't think that it's lack of ambition. So it will be interesting to see if that happened that day and Garber announced this, who would go one way and who would kind of stand still and let the others go.
Also today, Bayern Munich earned a hard-fought 2-1 win over Boca Juniors in Miami. Tremendous atmosphere. Boca fans are incredible.
Yep.
Harry Kane scored in the first half. Merenchiel scored a great equalizer in the second half, but then Michael Olise got the winner. And we had another Brazil over Europe. Flamengo beat Chelsea 3-1. Chelsea led 1-0 through Pedro Neto, but then Flamengo completely bossed the second half, scored 3 unanswered. Bruno Henrique, Danilo, and Wallace Young. So Brazilians are buzzing. I mean, that's an incredible result. I do want to acknowledge, because I see a lot of non-Brazilians posting on X saying, man, I got to start watching the Brazilian league. I mean, if this is the level of play, it must be incredible. There is a disconnect there because I've mentioned this once or twice before on the podcast. Brazil has this insane calendar because of their persistence with the state championships. It's so many games. Basically, from January to December, teams play every 3 days with no break. It doesn't even stop for the FIFA windows. And so that affects the quality of the play. It's slower. So in this tournament, you're actually getting to see what Brazilians teams look like when they're rested and have more time to prepare. It's great, but it does make you wonder, man, it's a shame they can't fix the calendar so we could get this type of football all the time. So if you're watching Brazilian teams play in this tournament and then you turn on the Brasileiro, you might be disappointed because it's not necessarily going to be this level of play.
Yeah, but this is what we deal with in American soccer all the time, and certainly when we have these tournaments, just bringing in people into the tent with the understanding that not everybody's going to stay. But if you convert some of them and they get into it because of the Club World Cup, that's a good thing. I mean, the brand of Brazilian soccer, we know from an international perspective, is historic. But the brand from Brazilian soccer, from a club perspective, if people get into it and say, "Man, did you see those teams play? Did you see those players play? I got to check this out," and the level of acceptance and credibility just increases.
I read reports today that both Brazil and Spain are interested in hosting the next edition of this tournament in 2029. Now, Brazilians are already super into this, so it would be guaranteed to be a success if it was there. But Spain is almost more interesting to me because, to the extent that there is this indifference from Europe, I wonder if the tournament actually took place in Europe, how that would affect that.
Yeah, this is a work in progress, and we're even seeing it right now. And we talked yesterday about the disparity in crowd size and people whining about it as opposed to just enjoying it. And you mentioned some really good crowds today, and some really animated crowds today, and that's good. I think that bodes well for the future of this tournament. Obviously, it bodes well for the future of soccer, and certainly as we look towards 2026. So like I said, we're watching it. We're watching and working the Gold Cup, but we're also having an eye on the Club World Cup, and it's happening. And people are kicking a soccer ball, and whether it's men's, women's, or co-ed naked, as long as people are kicking a ball, we'll talk about it. Mosse, anything before we go?
Yes, I do have a television note.
Oh my God. Okay, go.
The fourth and final season of The Bear drops on Hulu in just a few days. I can't wait. I know we're busy this summer, but that is a show that I'm going to make time for. I'm going to try to watch it.
Okay, all right. I don't have anything. I'm knee deep in this, and I fall asleep when I get home and rarely acknowledge what I if I turn the television on. But I'll try to find something out there to take my mind off the soccer. But I don't know. I love all the soccer. I'm not going anywhere. All right, so you good?
Yep.
All right, we'll be back again tomorrow, won't we? Yeah, we got, like we said, more games, more Gold Cup coming at you. We appreciate everybody tuning in. Thank you so much to Yerba Madre for presenting the State of the Union. We will be back again next show tomorrow. Keep pounding up and down and subscribing and smashing and doing all the different things you do out there, whether it's on YouTube or Spotify or Apple or all the different things out there, all of our different social media that we have when it comes to the State of the Union. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. And until then, and as always, my friends, size the day.